So 2 decades later, what's changed? It's now widely recognized that just 20% of health outcomes are tied to medical care, whereas up to 70% are tied to healthy behaviors and what's called the social determinants of health. Basically, everything that happens to us for that vast majority of time when we're not in the doctor's office or the hospital. Healthcare executives now routinely remind us that our zip code matters more than our genetic code. And one healthcare publication even recently had the audacity to describe the social determinants of health as the feel-good buzzword of the year.
Rebuilding carbon-rich agriculture soils is only real productive, permanent solution to taking excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. She's frustrated that scientists and politicians don't see the same opportunities she sees. This year, Australia will emit just over 600 million tons of carbon. We can sequester 685 million tons of carbon by increasing soil carbon by 0.5% on only 2% of the farms. If we increased it on all the farms, we would sequester the whole world's emissions of carbon.
The Mayans were a group of people who lived in Central America. They developed an advanced civilization. It lasted for it lasted for many centuries. Its high point was between the years 200 and 900. The Mayans are famous for a number of things. They built many city-states. These were like small countries. Naturally, the center of each was a city. Farms surrounded these cities and supported them with food. Mayan cities also contained exceptional works of architecture. The ruins of some buildings can be seen today. There are both large palaces and stepped pyramids. The Mayans had a writing system and literature, but they didn't use paper. Odd, no? Instead, they wrote on stone, wood, and tree bark. Lots of writing was done on the insides and outsides of their temples and palaces. They also formed books from tree bark, but sadly, few of these books have survived to the present day.
What happened to them?
Well, first, the heat and wet weather of the jungle destroyed many, but Spanish conquerors got most of them. They actively sought to destroy the Mayans' written records. Fortunately, other objects, including Mayan works of art, have survived. We can see some of this art on the stones of their temples and palaces. The Mayans were excellent pottery makers as well. They created figures of stone, clay, and wood, and they even made some objects out of metal. But there are few extant examples of any metal devices.
I'd like you to think for a moment about your hands and all the things you can do with them. You can use them to write or to drive. You can thread a needle, play the drums, build a wall, and so on and so forth. They can be careful and precise. Think of someone doing eye surgery, for example. But they can also generate huge forces. And here you might think of the sports person throwing a discus or lifting a heavy weight. How is it possible for our hands to be so incredibly flexible? Well, it's all down to the extraordinary complexity of the bones, ligaments, nerves, and muscles that lie beneath the skin of our hands. There are, for example, 9 muscles alone controlling just one thumb. Some of these are anchored to bones within the hand, while others link to the arm.
parts of the planet warm and cool during El Niño and La Niña, and infectious diseases also wax and wane in step with that climate cycle. Take malaria, shown to spike in northern Venezuela during cool La Niña conditions, or flu pandemics, which often follow months after La Niña sets in. Now researchers have linked another public health risk to El Niño climate cycling: poisonous viper bites. Their study area was Costa Rica, where health centers keep rigorous records on snake bites. They compared 9 years of those snakebite records, including some 6,500 bites, to climate data over the same period. And they found that snake bites were 2 to 3 times as prevalent in the hottest and coldest years of the El Niño climate cycle. Sounds counterintuitive, right? You might expect the climate extremes to have opposite effects. But the researchers say in hot, dry years, plant productivity peaks, driving an increase in the number of rodents, aka snake food, and potentially increasing the number of snakes. And snakes tend to move around more in hot, dry weather, increasing chances they'll encounter and attack an unlucky farmer. In cold, wet years, on the other hand, prey numbers plummet, forcing snakes to travel beyond their usual slithering grounds to eat, again increasing chances of an unlucky meeting. The study is in the journal Science Advances. The researchers also found 2 more variables that correlate strongly with Costa Ricans' odds of being bit: poverty and destitute housing. A reminder that when it comes to dangers from environmental disruption, it's often the least fortunate who are at the greatest. We've all heard exercise is good for your physical and mental well-being, but a good workout can actually influence the mental well-being of others, too, because bosses who hit the gym tend to be less abusive to their employees. That's according to a study in the Journal of Business and Psychology. Researchers asked 98 MBA students who were also employed full-time to rate how their supervisors treated them by responding to statements like, "My boss puts me down in front of others." The researchers also had supervisors fill out a different survey about their stress levels and weekly exercise. And as the authors expected, the more stressed out supervisors were, the more their employees felt belittled by them. But the employees felt better about bosses who exercised, whether it was yoga, cardio, or weightlifting. And just 1 or 2 days a week did the trick. Exercise didn't simply melt away the stress. Bosses who worked out reported feeling just as much pressure as their sedentary counterparts. Active bosses just spared subordinates the verbal attacks. So next time you feel like telling your boss to take a hike, it might actually be sound advice.
Naturalist has been invited to speak to the members of a college hiking club. Listen to part of the discussion.
Because of their protected status, a lot of bears have lost their fear of people. This may make them appear tame, but they're still potentially very dangerous. Bears are wild animals. 1 or 2 bear attacks occur each year in Glacier Park. The majority of attacks occur because people have surprised the bear.
What should we do if we surprise a bear?
You should try to avoid encounters in the first place by being alert and make noise, talk loud, holler. Bears will usually move out of the way if they hear people approaching.
Some people say to carry bells or put bells on your pack.
Most bells, even the so-called bear bells, are not loud enough. Calling out or clapping hands at regular intervals are better ways to make your presence known.
But isn't it kind of rude to make a lot of noise in the woods? I mean, people go there for peace and quiet.
In bear country, noise is good for you. Hiking quietly endangers you, the bear, and other hikers. People sometimes assume they don't have to make noise while hiking on a well-used trail. Some of the most frequently used trails in Glacier Park are surrounded by excellent bear habitat. You can't predict when and where bears might appear along a trail.
That's for sure. I remember my surprise when a black bear charged me. It must have been running away from hikers who surprised it on the trail ahead of me.
Don't assume a bear's hearing is any better than your own. Some trail conditions make it hard for bears to see, hear, or smell approaching hikers. You should be especially careful near streams, against the wind, or in dense vegetation. Stay with your group and, if possible, avoid hiking early in the morning, late in the day, or after dark, when bears are more likely to be active. Bears spend a lot of time eating, so avoid hiking in areas like berry patches or fields of glacier lilies.
How will the bear act if we surprise it?
Bears react differently to each situation. They may appear to tolerate you and then attack without warning. The most important advice I can give you is never to approach a bear intentionally. Each bear will react differently, and its behavior can't be predicted. All bears are dangerous and should be respected equally.
Your accent really reveals a lot about who you are and your identity. It will tell people what your native language is, be able to tell you probably where you come from.
Mark Pell, a communications professor at McGill University in Montreal. And according to Pell, one reaction to a different accent can be a bias against that person.
Previous research that has been done elsewhere showed that people who have an accent tend to be trusted less, simply because they have an accent. But the idea that we would have a bias against anyone who sort of doesn't sound like us, I think probably relates to some sort of evolutionary or long-standing suspicion we have of outsiders or strangers. So this might be sort of an ingrained response that we have to the accent.
But accents aren't the only thing we listen for when we have to decide if we trust another person. Tone of voice also plays a role. Pell and his team wanted to know if people would trust a confident tone, even if it came from someone with an accent.
Group work is increasingly an important part of university study, and students are likely to be asked to produce assignments with other group members. Some of the benefits of group work are that it prepares students for teamwork, something that they will probably encounter in the workplace. Also, work can be shared, and it tends to produce more creative solutions to problems. However, we should be aware that conflicts may occur as individuals negotiate their place in the group and different personalities try to work together. To help overcome potential conflicts, the group can define the major task they need to complete and then break the larger group objective into smaller tasks. It's important to develop strategies to help the group achieve their short and longer-term goals, and to do this, individual roles, including leader, need to be assigned.
What troubles me when I'm asked the question, can creative writing be taught, usually asked in a skeptical tone of voice, is not that I can't find an answer, but trying to figure out why I'm being asked. What do they want me to say? No, of course it can't. I just like taking people for a ride. I'm a con artist. Obviously, you can't teach someone to have a talent for storytelling or a love of language or how to write extremely well. But there are important lessons to be gotten across that will improve their writing and, at the very least, make it publishable. For me, the best starting point is the habit of close reading, really close, and responding to the language. Forget about grand themes and ethical content, whatever, for the moment, and ask if the author writes badly or well. So, writing can be taught through reading, through literature. Then I'd say, when it comes to your own writing, that you need to learn how to edit, to know when to say, you don't need that word or that sentence, and that whole paragraph can go. It's one of the most important lessons a writing class can teach. As for producing a Tolstoy or a Dickens, People like that tend to get there by their own route.